We all know that boats are full of gear. The question is, how long and how well does it all work? Let's find out what gear actually has what it takes to withstand the lifestyle, here on Prism Reviews.
All right, everyone, welcome to a Prism Reviews, and today we're going to be looking at an anchor. This is the Kingston Kwikset 50-pounder, okay? And today we're going to go into why this is on our foredeck and why we're even looking at a new anchor at all. In order to understand why this is the case, we have to kind of go back and look at our first anchor, which is the Spade. And let me go ahead and before we get too much into this, let's pull the Spade out and put it right here in front of me and go over its features and why we are potentially changing from that anchor. So this is the S120 Spade, and you might be looking at that like, John, that looks like a perfectly good anchor, and it really is. It's a great anchor, actually. That's why this whole thing is so hard for me, is because this anchor really is an excellent anchor in all states. When it comes to performance. Performance-wise, it is bar none one of the best performing anchors. Anyone that has this anchor will probably tell you a similar story. It's just good. It works pretty much every time. With the only exclusion of that is here on the East Coast, we've learned, at least in our experience, the soft, silty mud, real soft, silty mud, this anchor kind of struggles with. We have had multiple occasions where we've had a hard time setting this anchor, having to resort to using over 10-to-1 in order to make it set and really easily pulling it into the ground. Also, we've had this anchor drag on us one or twice now. Actually, one time is actually just north of here where we had it drag over a quarter mile while we were sleeping. It just kind of plowed. And when we woke up, we were not in the same place. Thank goodness we drug towards not a lee shore or anything like that. We kind of just drug out further into the bay. The second time was in Solomon's Island, which is kind of notorious for cruddy holding, come to find out. And yeah, we were on the boat that time, and we knew that there was a big wind switch about to happen with a thunderstorm. We were on board, wind switch happened, and sure as heck, we just kept on dragging back all the way. And if we didn't react, we would have ran into a dock. So not to say, but previous to that, this anchor has functioned flawlessly. I mean, this anchor in a lot of states probably has saved this boat more than one time when we were not around. I know one time when we were on board, we were on a lee shore, a wind switch came in Mexico, and we were basically in the surf, basically, while anchored, and this darn anchor held. So I love this anchor dearly. I owe this boat to this anchor, truly. Because of those other reasons, and because we're cruising the East Coast right now, it has made me look at other anchors. And before you go any further, you might be saying, John, why don't you just get a Mantis? By all means, Mantis are great anchors. They're incredible anchors, actually. We know a few people that have Mantis anchors and love them. And we even, on our family's boat, own a Mantis M1 on it, and it works great. I don't have anything negative to say against the Mantis, other than it has a roll bar. They have the M2, and you might be saying just go with that. Absolutely, that is an option actually for us. But the M2, dimensionally speaking, is huge. It's, I believe it's 23 inches wide at the fluke here, at the top of the fluke. And for us, with a bobstay, which is the wire that goes between the hull of the boat to the front of the bowsprit, we usually require a skinnier anchor, a skinnier fluke to get by that, or gets caught up on it. Even with this fluke, which is about 17 inches wide, it bounces off the bobstay pretty well when I pull it up. The other big kind of elephant in the room with this anchor is corrosion. As you can see, this anchor just got repainted. This is just zinc paint that I threw on it. This anchor the galvanizing has completely failed. That is the issue with these anchors, really, minus the dragging issue that we have in the mud here. That really isn't an issue anywhere else. The problem is within the first year of owning this anchor, the galvanizing started failing about on the front side of the fluke, right where the tip is. And then by the time I had to sandblast, I actually sandblasted this. I had sandblaster was available to me, I sandblasted it and put a 2-part epoxy paint with hopes that I could hopefully preserve the anchor longer. And that just kind of didn't really work either. So I've resorted into just buying $7 cans of spray paint, zinc paint, and spray painting it with zinc. And it doesn't last very long either, but it's a lot easier than 2-part epoxy, and I can get that anywhere in the world. It should be noted though, Spade apparently will replace this anchor if the galvanizing's failed. It doesn't say that specifically on their website, but I've seen them kind of mention that. We weren't offered that. We didn't really pursue that, honestly, either. We were kind of with the situation that we had here with the performance issues here on the East Coast in particular. I was in the mood to maybe just try something different. And really what came to mind was a Sarka XL. We follow Steve on SV Panape, and I really love his anchor reviews. And that Sarka XL kind of just fit the bill. It was not very dimensionally large. It was the right weight. The budget was right in the same cost of these anchors. And I mean, it seemed like a great fit for our boat. And I literally almost pulled the trigger on it. Like, things were in the cart, it was entering my credit card information when I actually found the Kingston brand. Now, with that said, let's start talking about the new anchor. I'll just mention right now too, this is a multiple part video. This is just kind of an introduction of that anchor and kind of a mini review of the Spade. Again, I give it 5 stars, 5 out of 5 stars for performance, generally speaking. Real quick on the performance. I have a suspicion about the performance with this anchor on this coast, and I'm going to test this out this summer to see if there's any validity to this suspicion. But I think my suspicion is right here with this thing, which is the Mantis Swivel, which I did review on this channel some time ago in Costa Rica. This is a great swivel. I am not quite sure how effective it really is after long-term use. I have a lot, we just pulled our chain out after using it for a whole year, and there was a lot of twist in the chain still, like significant, like where it was binding up in the windlass before it could even pass through the house, through the hawse hole. And I don't know if this is really worth, in my opinion now that I've used it for a long time, I'm not quite sure if a shackle would be a whole lot different. And what I'll say when it comes to the performance of this anchor is that they do a lot, Spade and a lot of other anchor companies do a lot to keep the weight of shanks low. If you put a bunch of weight out here, it makes a big difference on the total weight of the shank, because the more weight you put out on this shank, the less tip weight you get, apparently. So, I mean, I'm not into trigonometry or whatever that would be. That's from what I understand. So from what I understand, the more weight you put out on this lever arm, the less tip weight you're going to have, thus the performance of the anchor will be degraded. This weighs a lot. This weighs probably about 5 pounds. So 5 pounds at the end of that is a lot of weight. All right, well, that's my suspicions with the swivel. I think it's adding more shank weight, which is degrading the performance of that anchor in particular. We don't know that for sure. I'm going to test that out this summer, and I'll just have to get back to you on that. But there's reason to believe that might have some consequence in the whole performance issue with that anchor. And the other issue with that anchor is corrosion. And really the only way, in my opinion, to get a Spade that doesn't corrode is buy one that's in stainless steel. And that's a $2,300 thing. Spade was nice enough to offer us to basically get a credit for what we spent on our original anchor, so $1,000. So it would have cost us about, $1,300 to upgrade. And again, not terribly excited about the performance of that anchor here, at least. I wasn't terribly motivated to do that immediately. So we've talked about a few different anchors already really quickly, and I'm going pretty quick here because we have to kind of wrap this up so I can actually anchor in the next hour, basically. Mantis Anchors do a great job of, their performance is incredible because they put all that weight, so if you get a 55-pound Mantis, it's probably double the size of this Spade or Kingston, and it's putting all that to fluke size. And basically, the surface area is everything. Like, if you want a really well-performing anchor, there's really no denying that. The bigger the surface area, the more it can dig, If it can do both of those things well, the anchor is going to perform outstandingly, or it's going to have really good performance. So with that said, the Spade is kind of my baseline. The Spade is excellent. It works good in most conditions. I had a cool opportunity is when we were in the boatyard just now, there was a CQR, a genuine CQR on the ground. It was a 45 pound, so as close as I really could get. Luckily, I mean, it was 45 pounds, so it's fairly close to the size that we're dealing with right here, 50 and 55. But this is the CQR, a genuine CQR built in Scotland. It was stamped on the side or embossed on the side. And so that is one fluke. I did a trace of one fluke of the CQR. This is a half of the Spade. This is the tip, outer tip. This is the center line. And yeah, so you can get an idea of how much, I mean, there's a fair amount more surface area there. The Spade is, remember the Spade is flat. It's a concave shape. So most of this is like this. It basically is facing kind of like you're seeing it right there. Where the CQR is convex, at least the majority of it. So it kind of has like this shape when it's, so the only thing that's really concave or really facing the soil is this part, which is not very high, not much there. And it probably has a lot to do with its poor performance, generally speaking, although it has done fairly well in other, like Steve's other tests. And then here's a Kingston, is right here, and I'm just gonna overlap it over the Spade. And obviously it's not as big here, and the Kingston is kind of a convex and concave shape. These wings are almost flat. So there's a lot more flat surface here, kind of mimicking, or let's say, I don't know who's mimicking who, but it's mimicking a lot of the Sarka Excel, where you have kind of a blend of concave and convex. If you put the CQR in the mix, not only is the CQR just a lot shorter, but it's also, I mean, it's just a lot smaller. I mean, there's no denying how much smaller the fluke is of the CQR. So I thought that was interesting. Again, just 3 common anchors. You might be looking at the Kingston saying it looks a lot like a CQR or a Delta. You're not wrong. I wish I had a 50-pound Delta to do this with too, and I might have that in the future, but that'd be cool. Okay, so here is the Kingston Kwikset 50. Real quick history of Kingston. They started building anchors in the 70s for the Olympics that were in Canada during that time, Summer Olympics. They came out with this anchor in the mid-80s. They claim, I'm just going to tell you what they told me. They claim that they came up with this concept of basically a plow type anchor with a fixed shank before Lumar did. I don't know if that's true or not, but they basically say every anchor that looks like this anchor, so i.e. the Delta, was a copy of this anchor. And basically the 3 anchors that I know of that are kind of mainstream that are that way is the Delta, the Plastimo Cobra 2, and then the Sarka XL. And again, I wasn't even gonna look at this type of anchor. Generally speaking, I've had bad luck with these type of anchors, plow anchors. I've never really enjoyed them. I'm a huge fan of the Spade, so you would think I would go with another concave type anchor. But again, the market's pretty small on concave anchors, and I was tired of dealing with rust. So I really wanted to go stainless. I really couldn't afford really any of the other options. Ultra anchor, if budget was no option, I would have gone with the Ultra anchor, hands down. That basically checks all of my boxes in the right way. It's dimensionally small, it has a great reputation, but it's another $2,000 anchor, and I just didn't have the budget for that. So I contacted Kingston because I honestly wanted to just know more about these anchors, and after talking on the phone for about an hour with the people, they said, let's just send you some and see how you like the anchor, because they're exceptionally confident that this anchor will outperform the Spade, which is a hell of a high task to do, in my opinion. Like that's saying a lot. So let's go over the features real quick and kind of my thoughts on how this thing's gonna do, and I kind of want to show it off before it gets all dinged up and scratched up, because first right off the bat, this is a pretty anchor. Like, it's beautiful. Like, comes highly polished. These actually can come in 2 different finishes. They can come in this finish, or they can come in what's called a commercial finish, which is not polished to this extent. it looks like this little 14. And they literally sent me this just to show off what the commercial finish looks like. The welds haven't been ground down, and it's just in a more, I would say, a more brushed looking finish. I would have been totally okay with this type of anchor too. And then another thing to just hit right off the bat was the price. Like a 50-pound spade or 55-pound spade, a 50-pound Ultra, you're looking at everything in stainless steel is about $2,000. $2,000, and the Mantis M2 I think is $2,400. Really expensive. You can get this anchor from Defender for, I believe, $550 in the commercial finish, and in this finish I think it's like $750 or $850, but under $1,000. But $550 for the commercial finish for a stainless steel anchor, and if it has decent performance, is a massive deal. Like, there's nothing else on the market that is even remotely close to that price point. Even like the Deltas and stuff like that, none of them are even close to that price point. So right off the bat, if you are on a budget, and if this anchor is even somewhat good and you need a stainless steel anchor, if you want this look, you can basically get it, which is pretty cool. I mean, that's a massive marketplace or segment of the market that no one is kind of touching. I'll note the materials that were used. This is not 316 stainless though. This is 304 stainless. Again, I've always been under the impression you want to use 304 and non outdoor settings. This is 304L, and they're very proud that it's American steel too. This is not Chinese steel. It literally says it like 15 places on their website. It's American sourced, American made steel. And they have a warranty. I think there's a 20-year warranty on this anchor against corrosion. So if you have any issues with it, I'm guessing they'll send you a new one. And judging by how helpful they were on the phone and how incredible they are when it came to customer service and how much they prided themselves on that, I have no doubt that they would basically bend over backwards to make anything right. So 304L, again, I don't know exactly how long that's going to be good for, but they are very confident it's going to be good for basically indefinitely. Again, we'll keep an eye on that. When it comes to the scantlings and the overall dimensions, I have a few figures here. The shank is 5/8 inch thick, which is pretty chunky. And then basically when I unloaded this thing, the first thing I kind of dawned on me is how large the fluke is compared to how big the shank is. The fluke is massive. I don't know if it's good, it represents well on camera, but for a 50-pound anchor, like I just showed you, the 55-pound spade has a slightly smaller, I guess, overall dimensions than this anchor. So it's big, but not very wide. Again, it's only 15.5 inches wide, which is really good. Or I think 15, maybe 15 and a quarter, 3/4. It's under 16 inches wide, which is good for me. It should be noted that the shank length to the fluke length are the same. It's a 50-50, which I don't think ever seen that. At least I'm not very familiar with a ton of anchors hands-on, but a 50-50 distribution between shank length and fluke length is, it kind of looks weird, honestly, in person. Like, the shank looks too small for this anchor. It looks plenty chunky and plenty thick, but it's very stubby. I have no idea what that's going to translate to, but it should be noted that that's something different. Another thing that I'm gonna swing the anchor around here, kind of give you this profile. Again, like these wings, the deltas kind of flop up. They have kind of ears here that flop up hard. This is much smoother. And these kind of wings, they kind of say that it just basically cuts into the ground more like a knife or like a bayonet, I would say. And there's nothing to kind of impede it from just continuing to slide in, versus those wings, I believe, are kind of just to put some more pressure down. But deltas have a bad tendency of plowing just through the mud, and you want these things to dive and dive deep, and that's how these plows actually can perform so much better than even sometimes the more modern convex or concave anchors. So that to me is a good sign that this is engineered differently. This is not just a Delta knockoff. This is engineered much differently than a Delta. And then the long length of the fluke is significant. I mean, it's huge. I'm going to spin the anchor up here. Another thing to be noted too is that there's no crossbar here between the fluke ears. every other plow anchor I know of has a crossbar here. They got nothing here. So whether or not that's going to be a massive issue, I have no idea. But no crossbar means, though, there's less resistance for this thing, again, to dive. So that, to me, seems like a good thing. This is ballasted, and it's ballasted with lead. So there's lead in this toe area. But just look how huge that is, too. I mean, it's massive. There's basically a massive plate here for this thing to ride on. And I'm guessing that's why it doesn't need this crossbar, because this plate goes so far up the fluke, it just kind of supports it all the way up. This is quite sharp, and the nice thing about stainless is if you wanted to round off any of these edges to make them less of a, you know, a deck gouger, which I'm trying to avoid right now, you can, and you could just polish it again. But, oh Lord, yeah, it is kind of hard not to dick things up with this. So that's something I noted right off the bat. There's no crossbar. Again, I think all this is translated into having this thing basically dig in deep and dive deep, which understandably should work for its benefit. And in these conditions where we have a real thin, silty top layer, we want that basically to penetrate through that top layer and then get to the more consistent sublayer below that to get better holding. So yeah, there's that. So I mean, again, this is just supposed to be a real quick, you know, part one, just kind of showing off the anchor in all of its beauty. I'm going to be testing this anchor without the Mantis Swivel. It's just going to go straight to a Crosby 3/8 inch shackle to our 5/16 chain. And then once we actually can start relaxing and get back in the cruising lifestyle, we've been working on boats for the last 2 years straight to try to afford this lifestyle. I'm going to be testing these anchors kind of head to head, which will allow us to kind of hopefully get an idea on how they perform, and really is this as good as a Spade. And if it is, man, this is the bargain of the marine industry. For $550 for this finish, that is a really great thing. So I'm going to wrap up with some data here. The way I got this data is I measured this myself. This is not what's online. I actually measured this with a scale. The way I scaled this is I weighed the anchors on a scale like you would normally weigh an anchor on a scale, and then I propped each side that made contact with the floor up to the level of the scale, so they were all on a similar plane. And basically, I wanted to figure out tip to total weight ratios. And for the Spade, it's 55 pound. I measured 22 pounds on the tip, which gives you a tip to total weight ratio of 40%, which is high, very high. For the Kingston Kwikset, I got a total weight of 50 pounds, so what it's listed as. I had a tip weight of 14 pounds, so I have a tip to total weight ratio of 28%. So, I mean, it's not the lowest, it's actually quite, I think, similar to a Sarka XL. And like I said, it should be noted that, yeah, the fluke is 25 inches long on this, or the fluke is 25 inches long, and the shank is 25 inches on this. So it really is 50-50 on the shank. What should be noted, though, is that the small guy over here, the 15-pounder, has different dimensions. It's just not a scaled down version of this anchor. It's very different in all categories. Let me get into that. So this had a 25 and 25 inch, so 50-50 between shank and fluke. This is a 15-inch fluke to a 19-inch shank. So that ain't 50-50. And then what's even different is the tip to total weight ratio is different too. This is a 15-pound anchor, which it measured out to be that. And there's 6 pounds of tip weight, which gives it a 40% tip to total weight ratio, which is almost what the damn, I think it is the same as the Spade. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Obviously things don't obviously translate between all of the line, but that actually gives me more confidence than like question, which means that, in my eye at least, that means that each one of these anchors, each size, is engineered separately of each other to perform better. It wasn't just a let's just scale down 10%, 20%, 30%. It seems like each one of these anchors were designed specifically for their weight class. I don't know if that is the same for other anchors or if that's just very common. I'm not sure, but that is the case for these two anchors at least, that they're not the same. And are you texting people?
People are also texting us. Sorry.
Okay. Should also be noted that the biggest anchor that Kingston makes, from what I can tell, is the 50-pounder. They don't make anything bigger than that unless it's special ordered. I think they'll make pretty much whatever. They're a machine shop at their core, I believe. So if you want a 100-pounder, they'll make a 100-pounder. So that to me, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that is the case. So if you're looking at this and you're like, man, I need actually an 80 or 90-pounder, 90-pound anchor or 100-pound anchor, it's not the end of the world. I think you could actually still get this if it seems to be worth it. I would like to do more anchor testing in the future. Like I said, it's a part 1. Part 2 will have me actually using these things. And I'll start filming that today, I think, or at least doing an audio recording of me doing the initial set with this anchor. I would also like, if it interests people, I'd like to actually get some scientific gear on board, specifically a scale, so I can test potentially, at least with the small one, the breakout forces that are needed to break this thing out. And then also, I would just like to know how much force, in a big blow, get that thing onto our bridle and see how much force actually a boat of our size actually exerts on the anchor. And then once the water clears up, we're in terrible cloudy water, I'm gonna build a housing so we can put a GoPro on this thing and see how this thing sets. If the water's really clear, we have dive gear on board, we might even dive with it too. But I'm all in, I love it. I've gotten really into nerding out about anchors, and this has just been a lot of fun for me. I can see why Steve really enjoys it too. So once again, keep a lookout. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, if this interests you at all. We will be doing a lot more other videos. We've shot for the last, since the last video in Mexico, that has all been photographed. So we have terabytes, and I think we have 50 terabytes worth of footage of all of our travels since the last episode, I believe it's 33, to now. Which includes all the Caribbean, the East Coast, the Panama Canal, Panama in general, the Yucatan, the Cayman Islands. We did a lot of places. So that will be coming up. We've been just working, the Prism got completely restored by us. We also restored another 33-footer, and actually the people that we're buddy boating right now, we helped fair their entire decks and paint their boat too. So we've just been working our faces off for the last 2 years straight to afford this lifestyle again, but now we I believe, have enough to actually go cruising again. So hopefully the videos will start slowly trickling out. These Prism reviews are much easier for me to edit, so I prefer doing these, I guess. So until next time, this is John from SV Prism signing off. See you later.